So what grade would we put on this outside linebacker group? Last year, this might be the craziest group. We used the word roller coaster earlier, talking about Peyton's first year. Roller coaster might be the word I'd use to describe this group from last year, too, because you can't get lower than moving on from your two supposed starters by midway through the season. And then we saw games. Baron Browning had a two-game or a game where he had multiple sacks. We saw Nick Bonitto have a multi-game sack. So we saw some of these young guys step up in big ways as well. So we did see like highs of highs as well.
Yeah. I'm going to give this group maybe a B minus. I think overall they stepped up when guys left, and I think they played pretty well. But there still was that lack of pressure that we needed at times. And I think sometimes I felt like the coaches were unsure about these guys, because even guys like Nick Bonitto, like, what was he, third in the league in sacks at one point? And all of a sudden he's the backup. I think they saw production, but they ultimately didn't see that all they needed to make him the starter. You would think being that high up at sacks, you would be the starter now. You got the job. But ultimately, I think, they rotated a lot of guys here, and they weren't sure about the guys overall. And so even with Drew Sanders coming in, I think that leans more on the side of we're still trying to figure out this outside linebacker room more than we got it. And, Drew can just sit back and learn. So I say a B minus overall.
Really quick on Nick, to your point, he played in 15 games, had 8 sacks. Like you said, he was like exploded off the gates and was top 5 in sacks. 8 sacks, all 8 of his sacks came in 5 games. So to your point about like, man, he was there at times, he wasn't. Coaches didn't maybe fully trust him. The inconsistency was crazy with him, which isn't crazy for a young, talented guy. Like that's what you want to see from talented guys, is them to explode and then get more consistent as time goes on. But that's exactly what he was. To have all of his sacks in 5 games is wild.
That is wild.
And also, it's 5.5 of them in the first 5 games, then 2.5 the rest of the way. And I think a lot of that is that teams kind of figured out what to do with him. I know early on, it was like week after week after week. The Bears, I think, did it twice where they just
weren't
like
blocking him.
No, they would just try to like pull a defender, like it'd be like a fake power play action or something like that. And they just like have the guard come across and try to clean him up. He'd just run right by him. And after like the 3rd time it happened, I asked him about it. I was like, it's kind of crazy they keep doing this, right? And he was like, yeah, I was just talking to my coach about it. And he was like, enjoy it, because teams are going to stop trying to block you that way because it just doesn't work. Like, he's too fast. And then as soon as they started like getting away from that, he had a couple really nice moves, and those got him the last sacks. I can't remember with that last one. Was it the Browns game maybe? There was one that was just beautiful. And, yeah, it was the Browns game where he just like cooks a guy and goes and gets a sack, and you're like, oh. And that's what you wanted from him when you drafted him, is like the speed rush and the dip and all that sort of stuff. And the moves haven't quite come together. Again, like bringing Vaughn, those moves will come together. But I do think that the big part of it was teams just realized, like, if you just like get up on him, get your hands on him, it's going to probably work out okay. Yeah. But at least you know what they're going to do. Like, you took away one of the things, now you find the counter to it, Yeah.
So what do you think overall for this group?
I went with a D+. I think you look at, first of all, the total sack production, you're like 21st in the NFL. It was also the most sacks they've had since, I think, 2020, which is, combine those two things, it's a little bit sad.
That's wild.
The big thing to me was just that beginning of the season. And, like, you don't really get much pass rush production from Frank and Randy. And
we got to exclude them from this group.
But they were part of it.
They're part of it. They're part of it.
But they were the worst part of it.
They were,
right.
They
so
were,
it brings them down.
So I would say, oh, dang. I was giving them a grade. I was grading the guys minus them.
Yeah,
because
I'm with Todd, because it's like you need to like play a certain amount of games for you to be eligible for all these awards and everything.
No, I think
you're getting paid.
2023 Denver Broncos outside linebackers. What happened?
You start from week 1 to week 18, in my opinion.
D+. And I do agree. Like, by the end of the year, they were piecing everything. Like, Jonathan Cooper was doing all sorts of stuff. Like, Baron Browning, Nick Bonitto, one of them was gonna like win their matchup and get some good rushes. And at that point, they're also setting the edge. That first half of the season, they could not set the edge.
No, Randy Gregory.
Randy Gregory
could not set the
Randy
edge.
Gregory
There was
could not-
literally at least 21 points in that Miami game
Exactly.
attributed to Randy Gregory. Like,
Exactly.
I can't put that on the outside linebackers. Like, I know exactly who that was.
And he might win a Super Bowl in 10 days.
That's true. That is pretty crazy.
That's
Who won there?
crazy.
He got his money and now he's on a Super Bowl team.
He won.
I mean,
Yeah,
if you
he
just
won.
call this like the post Randy and Frank outside linebacker era, sure, like give him a B. Why not? Like they were. Jonathan Cooper was consistent. Everybody else like kind of flashed enough that you're like, yeah, you kind of got what you needed there. Didn't like exceed expectations by a ridiculous amount, but like got done. When I look week 1 to week 17, D plus. It just
Yeah.
did not go great.
And I'm there too. I'm exactly at a D plus as well because of Randy and Frank. And then you got okay from the other guys. The most consistent guy, you mentioned it, Jonathan Cooper. The opposite of Nick Bonitto, he had 4 sacks in the first 8 games of the season and 4.5 sacks in
Yeah.
the second in the second half of the season as well. So he was as consistent as you can be. Overall, he finished as the best guy on your team in quarterback hurries, knockdowns, sacks, pressures. He was absolutely your most consistent one. And then you did see flashes from the others. So I think the way this would grade out and what we've broken down is grading, projecting, like what we expect this group to be, probably a lot better than the grade we gave them last year. And a big reason for that is 2 guys that you paid a lot and that are no longer on your team.
Yeah.
You want to change or you want to keep it B minus?
No, I'm gonna keep it a B minus
I like it.
because
You have your
yeah, I think I have my reasons, and if we're talking about the outside linebackers that are on paper right now for the Denver Broncos, I say B minus.